to Aware. We are dedicated to communicating information that inspires your positive growth and change. Are you interested in a peaceful planet? Are you interested in optimal health? Are you living with purpose? Are you enjoying your life? We realize each person can make a difference, and our mission is to empower your awareness. The choices that you make in every moment shape your life, and we encourage you to realize that you have your own answers and to always listen to your own truth. We invite you to stay aware. Hello, welcome to the Aware Show. I am Lisa Garr, and it's truly an honor to be with you today. And thank you for joining me, because we get to have empowering conversations that inspire positive growth and change on the Aware Show. And if you ever listen to something that you love and you want to share with a friend, you can always go to our podcast, which is The Aware Show. Wherever you listen to your podcast, you can always share information from there, which we really love. If you find something that moves you and you think a friend might help, please share it. And sharing is caring. The more people that can learn about change being possible, the better. So that brings me to our conversation today about anxiety and depression. Have you ever felt maybe temporary fear or anxiety or anger, and you were maybe able to move beyond it? What about those that can't move beyond it, that don't have the skills or the chemicals just take over in order to find a way to move around that negativity that surrounds our lives? Well, there actually is a wonderful, straightforward mythological? No, it's a methodical approach. Maybe it's mythological, I don't know, but it's methodical no matter what. And it is a way that you can have actual steps to bring you personal peace and productivity. And it's called the Process Way of Life. And it is brought to us by a wonderful clinical therapist, award-winning author, Faust Ruggiero. And he explains the process in his previous release called the Fix Your Handbook. And that is a wonderful way to be able to go through it on a daily basis, which is practice is always very, very important. And also the Fix Your Anxiety Handbook, which is also being released this year. Thank you so much for joining me, Faust. I so appreciate you and all that you're contributing to people that are locked by anxiety and depression.
Lisa, it's a pleasure to be with you. I hope we can throw a few things out that are going to help some people.
Absolutely. I know many, many people that suffer with this, and also those that don't know they suffer with it. So I wanted to ask you about that in the first place. What are some of the characteristics of anxiety and depression that people might not recognize as such?
You know, I always tell people, you know yourself well enough. When things start to change, things aren't working, and you know, you look at your body first. Yeah, are you feeling more anxious? You're feeling tired. Your emotions, are you feeling a little less tolerant, a little short with people? Intellectually, are you know, maybe decisions aren't coming so fast. You're having a hard time separating some of the facts. When those things are happening, even spiritually, you disconnect from yourself. You know, those are all red flags. And we have a tendency to go through those, or at least say, well, you know, it'll probably figure itself out in time. If it's happening, it probably won't. That's the sign that things are going just a little too far. So you watch those signs. When that happens, it's usually, you know, important to start taking some steps to change some things.
Have you noticed that anxiety and depression rates have increased recently? And what do you think was the catalyst around that?
Well, yeah, they have increased, and there's a number of reasons. You know, most people like to go back to the pandemic, and you know, that didn't cause anything. That just exacerbated a lot of old things. We have a tendency to try to gain our happiness from outside of ourselves. We follow things that really aren't going to be good for us. We put ourselves in positions to, you know, I call it feed the demon. So you're actually doing things that feel good for the moment, but in the long run are going to cause us problems. They affect our schedules. We have horrible daily schedules and nutrition. We're into quick fixes, emotionally reacting, all those kinds of things. We're doing those things, and we really don't have to. I mean, there's so many other ways to approach life, but we keep doing those things, and that creates the circumstances we don't like in the long run.
Well, it doesn't help that every single piece of marketing and social media out there teaches you to reach outside yourself for happiness. Try this thing, be this weight, get this relationship. Everything is outside of yourself, and it's packaging, it's marketable. Someone can't market fix yourself, like you are doing.
We're trying.
Yes, you are.
You know,
Yes.
and you're right. It's marketability. It's optics. It looks good, and people look for things where they don't have to invest themselves. Where you buy something, it's a quick fix. It's supposed to make you feel better. Anything that happens quick doesn't last long. That's the rule of thumb. So
Right.
I just tell people, get strong inside. Those of us that did that when the pandemic hit, we didn't blink an eye. We just said, okay, we're going to make some changes. Some things are going to be a little different. I'm sure I'm going to survive it. And we move forward. Where when people were dealing with all that outside stuff, that's what came to a halt. And quickly, then people didn't know what to do. And didn't have a self, so to speak, to come back to.
Right.
So,
Right.
you're not finding yourself. You're creating a self that you like being with. It's like your best friend. Really, your first best friend is you.
Right.
And once you create that, you can be alone and you're fine.
Well, there is also a certain comfort in the miserable. So it's a pattern, it's an addictive pattern, but to go to that place of depression somehow creates a sense of comfort, I have heard. Can you
It
tell us about
creates,
that?
yeah, you know what it does? It creates comfort zones. We don't challenge ourselves. When we're building from the inside, we know we're going to accept change and transitions. We're going to take some risks. We're going to introduce new concepts into our lives, and we're going to get a little bit uncomfortable until we learn the process. In the opening, you were talking about learning, and it takes time, and the brain adjusts, and it does adjust. But learning is repetition over time. And we really just have to keep presenting ourselves with that information and keep using it. When we get anxious and we become depressed and we say, well, I can't, we become that person that we victimize ourselves. We can't do anything. Now we're in a position to say, well, I'm not going to move forward. So I'll create small comfort zones. And they're very, very small. I know how to navigate them. I know how to feel in all of them. But the problem is that circle becomes smaller and smaller and smaller, and it becomes toxic. And then we become toxic to ourselves.
Mm.
So that's the problem.
That's what comfort zone is it becomes very tiny, very small, very
Yeah.
isolating, and you
Yeah.
get stuck there. That is what a typical panic attack looks like, is that cycling. What type of chemicals happen in the brain when a panic attack happens or an anxiety attack happens?
The easiest way to explain this, I get that question a lot. I go back to what we know as the fight or flight response. The adrenaline rises. It gets your body in a position to do something and do something fast. When that anxiety attack, that panic attack hits, that's what's occurring. But we don't do anything. We're not running. We're not fighting. We're sitting in it, and all this horrible energy it's exploding, and nowhere to go. I tell people, if you're not a person of action, if you keep on repeating the old behaviors that keep all that energy inside and keep you in those little zones, you're going to have anxiety. It's just what it's going to cause. If it's not anxiety in your comfort zone, it will be when you are asked to take a step out, and that will occur if there are other people in your life.
It'll be blocked, it won't be
Absolutely.
possible. Yeah. You'll
Right.
just hit the wall. To get out of a panic attack, and I've had them before, it does take someone else to help you sometimes, and breathing is super, super important. So when you go into that fight or flight, your breath gets really, really super shallow, and you don't experience the full breadth of the lungs, is you have a lot of steps on how to get out of these types of situations yourself, really to do this yourself. What would be the first step someone could do when they find themselves trapped in a place of anxiety and depression? We can talk more about how people get there, but do you have
You know,
any solutions there?
absolutely. The first thing I tell people is anxiety must be addressed physically first. If you're not going to think yourself out, there's no physical condition we think ourselves out of. If the doctor says you have diabetes, you don't think yourself out of it. It's a physical condition. So is anxiety. It's not a mental condition, it's physical. And it becomes mental because after we don't address it physically, it hits the emotions. We get really wrapped up in what we're feeling. Then it hits the intellect and we can't think about anything. So now we're caught in what we think is, I'm crazy, I have a mental problem. No, you have a physical condition. Breathing exercise is a great way to start. Does two things. It slows your body down, which is necessary, and it keeps you in the moment because anxiety pushes you typically to the future, what's going to happen. So that the breathing exercises really are a great way to start. Meditation, if you're willing to go there.
It's hard to
Again,
go from a full-blown panic attack to a meditation, but the 4 square breath is like breathe in for 4, hold for 4,
correct.
out for 4, hold for 4, is something that our yoga class starts with that every single time. So it's a great way. And then it increases in for 5, hold, and then out for 5 and hold. And it does help with the parasympathetic nervous system. Is that
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. And the nice thing about breathing, because it's really an introduction when you look at it, it's an introduction to meditation. You're right. You are not going to be anxious and say, okay, fine, I'll start meditating and I'll feel better, because in 2 minutes after you sit down, you're going to want to jump out of the chair. You're not ready yet. Start with the breathing and do it many times a day. Just the breaths you're talking in and out slowly. And you can find breathing examples anywhere online. You can follow, there's several and they all work. So you start there. Once you are doing that, because you're going to incorporate breathing in meditation, there is no form of meditation that doesn't use the breathing exercises, that whole
True.
slow. So you
Right.
start there, then move into meditation. And don't get the wrong ideas about meditation. This is not some state where you don't know what's going on. It's simply a relaxed state in your body. You're teaching your body how to relax. And if you do these things, what happens over time, you're actually working against what happens when you are anxious. It's a very simple process.
Do you have a simple meditation practice that you suggest, or is this what the Fix Yourself Handbook is all about?
I tell people to go and get the one that works for you. There's several online. The simplest one is simply, it's the one I work with beginners the most often, is just sit in a chair, be comfortable, have comfortable clothing on, breathe very slowly, try to clear your mind. If you want to use a mantra, that's a sound that has no meaning, do that when you exhale and just start there. And it's almost like walking on your treadmill or your elliptical trainer. You start with 2 minutes going very slow, then maybe 3, then 4. When you get to 20, you may increase the difficulty factor, and that's what meditation is. Don't worry about, I have to get 20 minutes in, because that's what the program said. If you meditated today and you're just starting and you got 5 minutes in, you did real well. The fact that you started is good. Your body is going to adjust. The other thing I tell people is, if you're going to do all this slowing down stuff we're talking about, get the accelerants out of your body. You don't have a Red Bull or one of those things and then sit down and attempt, or 5 cups of coffee in the morning. We try to, your body should be able to for you to get up in the morning and not put an accelerant in it. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't dare at this point, doing this all these years. If I put an accelerant in my body in the morning, I'll have trouble sleeping at night because my body produces all the energy I need, and I am not a sit back, do nothing person. I'm on the go 12 to 15 hours a day, every day, calmly. And
Yeah.
if you do that, your body will it loves that pace.
You
you know.
have natural caffeine in your body.
Exactly. And your body's designed to produce that when you need it. But
Mhm.
when you start putting the accelerants in, your body doesn't know what to do with all of that stuff.
Well, it
Now you
also
want to calm down.
exacerbates ADD if anybody happens to have that situation going on as well. You can't really focus. It's an illusion.
It is, and again, caffeine is being sold in just about everything these days.
Mhm.
It used to market it carefully. Now they're marketing it with reckless abandon. It's out there. Use this. Your day is going to get better. And they'll tell you. And this one even has more caffeine than the next. And I'm saying,
Right.
so
I,
if you're going to deal with this, you deal on the physical level first.
I've
You're going
noticed that. I've noticed
you're
that. Like coffee has a certain amount of caffeine in it, but you can get extra caffeine in your coffee. And what exactly what is that? Like, is it a chemical? Because it's naturally produced in cocoa beans.
natural accelerant. It just accelerates everything in the body. It makes our body go faster. Keep in mind, when you have anxiety, everything in your body's going faster.
Okay.
Now you're saying, I hate this anxiety, but I'll have another cup of coffee, or I'll have a double espresso. And then maybe I had a soft drink in the afternoon, or I had a monster drink, or I had a Red Bull,
Right.
or whatever it is. And it's marketed that way. If you're going to do that, if you're going to put things in your body that accelerates your body, you're actually inviting anxiety in. You won't define it as anxiety first. You'll define it as accelerated pace, which makes me think clear and get more done. But then you'll realize maybe you're arguing with people more often. You react faster. You're more emotional. If that's what you want as part of your day, that again, short shelf life on that one,
It
because
makes it
sooner or
worse.
later it's going to beat your whole body up. It's going to get you sick in other areas also.
Right. It definitely makes it worse. And as far as I know about anxiety, it does feel that something is outside that is causing it, that you can't control it, that you can't get a hold of it. And so, what do you suggest, just a simple starting to focus on during a meditation? Do you have I mean, I know there's a lot out there, but
Well,
do you
one
want,
of the things you can do, and this has been around for 70, 80 years, it's called a calm scene. It's simple as that. Some people, I'll say, what is the place you feel the most calm? Typical answer is usually the mountains, the woods, or the beach. It's
beach?
usually
Yeah.
one of those three. I say, okay, then fine. Visualize yourself there, breathing very slowly, sound of the waves, the sun on you, and do that. Now what you're doing is taking yourself out of your anxious place. The other thing you do is, if the anxious place is your living room, you probably don't want to try to meditate in your living room, because
Right.
it's already got some baggage, if you will. Get a place, go in the bedroom, go where it's going to be quiet, you're going to be interrupted. It's not too hot, it's not too cold. Nice relaxed clothing on, all that kind of stuff. Get to your calm scene, do your breathing, and just try to stay relaxed for, if you can go 5 minutes the first time, great. Maybe next time it's 6, and keep on going. If you can get to 20 minutes, you're in great shape.
Yes. Now, in terms of ingesting things like the media or social media and so forth, it definitely keeps us in that frenzy, sensationalized step. It's designed that way. The news is designed to grab your attention. It's designed to sound dramatic. And it's not their fault. That's what they're told to do. So, how can you really kind of take yourself down from a little bit of a news diet or find ways to protect yourself against that sensationalism?
First thing I'm telling people is limit your amount of time with social media. Limit your amount of time with anything that accelerates your brain like that. What you said is right on target, Lisa. If you're going to watch the news, understand that it's not the facts they're giving you. They'll give you some of them. It is presented in a fashion to grab you and pull you in. It's now become kind of what I call passively interactive. They want you involved to the point that you're reacting. They'll ask you, respond here, go to our Twitter page and do this. And you think you're part of that. You're not. You're not part of anything. And everyone now is trying to grab that 15 seconds of fame, and no one's paying attention. They're just pulling you in. It's advertisers' dollars. It's all that kind of stuff. Know that it's a game. Limit the amount of time. Decide where you're going to get your information. If I'm going to look for information about anxiety, I'm not going to Facebook. I'm not going to go on one of the social media platforms. I'm not going to hear what's on the news. They're not going to give me answers. I'm going to look for experts in the area and hear what they have to say. Experts. Podcasts have grown to be huge, and everyone has a podcast, and 90% of them don't have the facts. So there's a thing, kind of a formula that I use to people. I call it the 3-question formula. It's what, when, and how. If they're saying they're going to do something, that you should know what it is, you should know when, and you know how they're going to do it. If they can answer those 3 questions, it's probably not anything you want to listen to. And the other thing to do is stay away from their conclusions. You have to know where the information comes from. Get the information first, and then you make your decision on what it's all about.
Yes, yes. If you can have that discernment, if you can really choose where, if the truth is coming through. And that also teaches you to listen to your intuition. And it's a really good skill to start to develop. Is this what this story is trying to tell me, feel true to me? Or is it something that's designed to elicit an emotional response? Is it feel like it's the right thing for me to ingest, to look at the social media account and compare myself to all these people's lives who sound like they're doing great, or look this way, or feel, have this relationship? It's definitely addicting, and it's designed to be addicting. So you have to be even more conscious to not get involved with it.
And the way to deal with that is to always and only focus on the information. If someone says to me, I saw that movie, it was horrible, that's their conclusion. I don't know if I'm going to have that conclusion. I'm going to want to know where the facts came from. I'm going to ask questions. I'm going to see where they got their information. There's a lot of I heard, and then this person has a conclusion, and that person takes that as the conclusion. Ask them, where did you get your information? We can't do that with news sources, but you'll notice they don't tell you where they got the information. They tell you this is the information. And then maybe they may have someone on the scene who gives you more conclusions.
Yes.
That's all.
My husband shared a story with me the other day that he saw on, I think it was John Assaraf's, he's a really great mind trainer. And he was talking about the news being like holding a glass of water out in front of you. And you have to hold the glass of water. And then the longer you listen to the news, the heavier the glass of water gets. And then the more news, the heavier and heavier it gets. And you can't stand there the whole time and have this glass of water out in front of you. You're eventually going to get fatigued, or your arm is going to fail. And it's just like the news. You take it in small bits, and then you put it down, or you put it away, or you turn it off. And that gives you a chance. It's not just the news. I'm talking about social media as well, where you can trust yourself to unhook from something like that, because it has a huge effect on our culture. And I think the pandemic did exacerbate that, because it drove us to find community online more than anything. And we saw mental health issues skyrocket during that time, right?
Yes, we did. You know what happens is we're getting a lot of information that's not usable. When I started writing and being a person who's counseled for 4 decades, I thought, what I need to do is what I do when I counsel people, is not only give them the information, it's say, okay, now I'm giving you this. Let's look at how you can make this actionable. That's how you can use this information to change something or explain something, where you can draw conclusions from it yourself. If you can't draw conclusions, if you're not going to use the information the news is giving to you, why listen? That's the way I look at it. Your mind is going to receive so much information every day. At the end of the day, look and say, what part of that did I use to institute some positive changes in my life? If I can't do that, I'm not sure why I'm watching. If I can't do that from a self-help book, I'm not sure why I'm reading it. So, at the end of all my chapters, I have 6 or 7 or 8 points that says, here's the information the chapter covered. Now do these things. And if you do them and repeat them, your life absolutely will change, but you just have to keep doing them.
I think that's great, because a journal with just blank pages is really difficult for someone who's trying to get outside themselves and really fix themselves, like empower themselves. The fact that you have prompts in there and preceded by a paragraph, a chapter, and you really give people tasks on things to do is fantastic. I was really looking for something like that for a friend of mine who struggles with this. Now, can you also, is depression and anxiety, are they the same thing or different characteristically?
The different characteristically. One, when we talk about depression, we first should define terms. People think of depression as I'm sad and I don't really want to do much. That tends to be environmentally induced. Clinical depression, which we talk about, is where the brain is simply clinically down. All the processes are down. We can't. It's not doing what it should do.
The chemicals, everything, right?
Chemicals, everything, all that's down. It's just, and so, you're not going to feel motivated. You will not feel invested in something. If you start something, you won't finish it. Your thoughts, your internal language is just horrible for yourself. All those kinds of things. Anxiety, on the other hand, you're going so fast that a lot of the same things happen, but the brain is going so fast now, and anxiety can happen without depression. We talked about coffee and those stimulants. Get your brain doing everything it's supposed to do at a really high pace. The problem is it burns you out in the long run, and it creates anxiety. So what we're talking about is one part, the depression, where the activity is so far down that you really just don't have the resources to go out and plug in. With anxiety, you have the resources, but you're going so fast that you can't properly utilize them.
Okay. Now, can depression be spurred on by an incident, like a death of a loved one or a job loss or, God forbid, a pet loss? Those are very, very hard things to deal with. And you have not the ability to be resilient around it.
There's a little piece that you never hear about those things. The event can happen. And in some cases, if it's death of a spouse or a child, it may really hit you for a long period of time. But a lot of these things that we experience in life are triggers. And what they do is they trigger the body into anxiety or depression. Then that condition takes over. There may be some rumination over what the event was here and there, but now the body is in it. And once it starts, it just keeps on going. So the event may be long gone, but what it does is it kind of presses the button, the body reacts, and now the body keeps on going. The emotions kick in, and then comes the brain. And then there's no connection. People will say, I'm connected with nothing today. I'm just doing things.
Right.
And so that's the thing to remember. And it's not that your life is horrible. It happened, and it started the process. The key then is to stop the process. Where do you start? Physically. Always start physically.
Physically meaning movement?
Physically, it could be sometimes getting some action going, but really address what you're dealing with physically. If it's depression, we're going to try to get some little things, anything at all. I don't care if you're folding laundry or went into your workshop and did something, whatever you do. If it's anxiety, then we want to tone it down a little bit. But the key is physically get the body either moving so I can try to move out of this depression, or get the body calmed down a bit because I'm pumping so much into it, or something happened where now I'm in this anxious cycle. The best analogy I can give you is like when people have migraines. They'll talk about them as cycles. And if you can break the cycle, you can almost stop the migraines or get them to the point where they're very manageable. Depression and anxiety, like migraines, have cycles. And once something happens, the cycle begins. And the problem is we keep the button engaged. So it keeps getting pressed. Right. Cycle keeps engaging, and we go through it, which trains us to believe that we can never beat it. And we can. It's very beatable.
Right. It's so very interesting because especially if you had any type of fear or depression or problem you couldn't solve before the traumatic event happened with the loss, it can get you locked into a place that further sticks you or gets you stuck in the depression. Is that Is that the case?
That's it. It's the
Mm.
triggering event. And sometimes it's something as simple as I had a fight with my significant other, and then the fight is over, and you're still stuck in whatever that was. And then there's a thing we do that really keeps it going, and that's our internal language. I'm not good. I'll never get out of this. I'm lousy at anything I do. People don't like me. And we have really trained our brains to believe that kind of stuff.
Complain and frustration and anger and
Anything.
all of
Look at
that.
the negative side. It's the person that goes out to eat and it's a wonderful restaurant and the company's wonderful, and they complain about the lighting in the restaurant or the service or the food wasn't exactly what I thought.
And they're going
And
to
and you
attract
say,
more of the same. They're going to attract the wrong order
which
being.
reinforces it, and it
Mm.
keeps on going. And I tell people, you are going to spend 90% of your time every day in your own head. Talk
Yes.
to yourself nicely. I can do things. I am okay. All right, I made a mistake. I can fix that. Let yourself hear that. And people will say, well, that doesn't work. And here's my counter to that. I say, you've been doing the negative, the counterpart of that, for X amount of years, and it worked, didn't it? So if you believe that negative stuff, why can't you believe the positive? Train your brain to go in that direction.
Well, it's also a chemical thing. I mean, like what if you're stuck in a pattern of complain, 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 complain about everything around you and you don't know it? Only people around you know it, but you don't know it. Or
And that
negativity.
happens.
Yeah.
That happens. One thing about the brain, and again, you don't hear it too much, but the brain is a physical structure. So what we do to it will cause physical changes. Just like, the person's in their 20s and everything's going great. Now they're in their 80s and everything's slowed down and memory's gone. The structure of the brain will change over time. Autopsies will show you that. But what we do to the brain also changes that. Easiest way example is when I deal with a lot of abused women, and people keep saying, why do they keep going back? They must want that. No, they don't. The structure of the brain has changed so dramatically that it doesn't know how to think in any other terms. So when you present it with something else, it's so foreign that the brain doesn't know how to assimilate the information and accept it. The structure changes, but it can change for the positive. We just keep on doing all those positive things. Even if you make a mistake, I know tomorrow I'll get up and I guarantee you I'll make at least one or two, and I'll look at that and say, well, that's okay. I'll deal with that. I'll fix that. And I look at my life and I'm doing all the things I think are just wonderful, not because I'm anything special, because I'm working to do that. And everyone can, but we got to talk to ourselves a little more kindly. And I'll tell you, one of the tip-offs for me that is when a person's not in their own head, they're not being nice to themselves. They're not nice to anyone else either. That
Right.
internal language is coming out.
Right.
So
Right.
that's a tip off you. If you're doing a lot of negative talking about other people, think about what you're doing in your own head, because it's probably starting there.
Well, I mean, it's easy to do if you look around you. There's this herd mentality of negativity, of complain, of talking about the recession, of constantly experiencing that. And if you see this all around you and you see evidence of it in your own life, how do you just change your state? How do you do that?
First thing is to become conscious of what you're doing. You're not going to change anything until you say, let me take this apart and see what I'm doing. And be honest with yourself. I have a chapter in the first book I call Brutal Honesty. Just be able to look at the facts and say, yeah, that applies to me. You don't have to share it with the world. No one knows this. You're just
Well,
doing this for
it's hard
yourself.
for loved ones to share it also, to say to someone, look, you're hysterical. I mean, it'll make them more hysterical.
Well, that's we always fear the response of the other person. And, a lot of it's in your delivery. And, sometimes what I'll do is I just ask questions. How do you feel about what you just did? Or how did you feel about that situation? And let them answer the questions. The other thing is I don't look for changes because I brought it up. I'm just doing the service. I'm doing to them what I do with myself. And if they grab it and they run with it, that's great. If they don't, that's up to them. Maybe they're going to get it 6 months down the road. Everyone gets it at a different time. But if you can take some time and say, this is me, this is what I do, this is a part that I don't like too much, and I
Well,
want to change that, then you can define what needs to be changed. Then the steps are there.
Right, right. This is, something to do if you have someone in your life like this, like a parent or a friend that is hysterical all the time or complaining all the time or fatalistic all the time. You can only take care of how you feel
Yeah.
and set the boundary and say, this is not something that I want in my life at this point. If you want to do that, you can, when you're done, you can call me, or I don't support this type of behavior. I will call you later when you're out of this loop, or something like that, where you can be in charge of how you feel and set the boundary with yourself and say, okay, you've got one more sentence in this, or I'm going to hang up. And I have a lot of experience with this.
Yeah, and and I do too. And those are the things where, and I'll tell them it's, I'm setting the boundaries. Setting boundaries is easy. It's defending them. That's always the
True.
issue.
Yeah.
Because what we know, I always call them the boundary thieves. They're coming and get your boundaries. They're gonna get them if that in their minds, that's why you set them, for them to go to violate them. So it's going to happen, and it's just a question like anything else. You keep on doing it. You're your own gatekeeper. You decide who gets in, how they get in, what gets in. You decide all that, and then you tell them. And then if they continue to violate, then you do what you need to do to protect you. And then they're masters of their own destiny, and they
Right.
decide how they want to deal with it.
Right. Because sometimes, if there's like a frenzy like that happening, the last thing that person's going to hear is self-love, self-compassion. You can start by saying, is that the kindest way that you would treat someone else? Would you be that mean to one of your friends? Would you ever treat another person the way you treat yourself? That's been a telling question. It's a good way to start to just wake up the person and have them become aware of their behavior. And then you can go into self-compassion, being more forgiving for themselves, maybe do something nice for themselves, like have a cup of tea or go out for a walk or get together with a friend or make a phone call or something that allows them to break the state, to break the cycle.
When I have to talk to people like that, I usually tell them what I like about them first. I say, look, I like all these nice things about you, but then there's this piece, this thing you do, that one I have a tough time with. And then I didn't just come up to them and say, I hate when you do that, or I don't, that really bothers me, because that sounds like it's all encompassing. Hi, by the way, I want to tell you about you. Now I'm going to tell you what I love being around you. I love when you're like this, but when you get that way, it's not that I want to judge it. It rubs off on me and I am very uncomfortable. I don't like it. So I need to tell you that. And, if we can stay with the former, I'm glad. I'd love to be with you. But if this comes along, I may say to you, just what you said, I need to take a break here. And, let's get together when you feel a little bit better. Not that I don't want to be there to help you, but that negative part, I just can't take that on.
God, that's great. That is really, really great, is to basically say, I praise you, love this, and this, but I can't do this.
Right.
That is genius. Now, what if you're the person that's having that experience of the cyclical hysteria and depression and complaining and negativity, which I think complaining and negativity and hysteria are just another word for depression. Is that right?
It can be. And anxiety, absolutely. Absolutely.
How do you then get out of that cycle if there isn't someone as loving to tell you you're in that cycle?
Well, you have to assess your life, and morning and evening, you get up and say, okay, this is how I want to be today. But at the end of the day, you should be able to look at where you are and say, did this work today? Was I happy with the way things are? Because if you're genuinely happy with it, whether people like you or not, I guess you're going to stay where you are. But if you're looking at it and say, no, these things are not working out, then you're going to want to make some changes. The only caution is, you don't want to say they didn't work out because that person did whatever I think they did. We're adults. We have control over our minds and our bodies, our emotions. We're responsible for those. We own those parts of ourselves. So if it's not working, we make some changes. We're very good at staying in toxic situations.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that strange? But the point is, and this is why the book that you have, of the journal, the handbook, using the process is really, really great. So you make that a way of life. The process is the way of life. And that eventually, if you stick with it, transforms your mood. What about people that are on the extreme side of this? So on the extreme depression side or extreme anxiety side, are there resources that you can share that can help with that?
First thing, if you have that much depression where you can't, you're just stuck and can't do anything, anxiety that's firing all the time. We talked about physical. Get yourself first. Get your blood work done. Get a physician to see you. That does not mean you go for medication. Go and get your body tested. Get your blood work done. Let's see what's going on. I had a person, several people over the years that will come in with depression or anxiety, and I'll say, get the blood work done. I want your thyroid checked. I want to see that first. And then
Right.
lo and behold, someone comes back and says, yeah, my numbers were way out of whack and they put me on medication. I don't have those symptoms anymore. And it wasn't like I had to do a lot with them, maybe some retraining based on the years of all that happening so they can feel good about themselves. But other than that, it was physical. Rule that out first.
What do you feel about things like antidepressants, and can they be used temporarily? What do you feel about that?
You know, when I started practicing, Lisa, 40 years ago, maybe 5% of my clientele was on antidepressants. Now it's more like 75%.
Wow.
We have become a drug culture. Easy example, turn on the television and you'll see prescription drugs for everything all the time. Now, we can't just go and buy those drugs. So why in the world would they market them to us? They're not marketing the drug. They're marketing the drug culture. They want you to believe that the medication that they're selling, which is 100 times more than it costs to make, is something you absolutely need. If you don't use it, there can be problems. And if you do, your life somehow is going to be substantially more improved. And then before the commercial goes off, they give you the list of 10 things that are horrible about the drug. And then they have the person smiling and dancing and doing whatever they're doing and tell you how wonderful you are. And you're buying the drug.
Yeah,
Most
they
of
all
you
result in death.
That's what they're doing. Most of you will not need the drug. For all those years, for 30 some years, I got people, help people feel really just good about themselves. And now they come in with medication. And not only they come with medication, doctors are prescribing it and don't even say, go get counseling too. You have anxiety or depression, go let somebody help you. They say, take the pill.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know about other countries, but I know the US has this thing that you can advertise pharmaceuticals, but in many other countries, I think US is one of two that can. And I'm curious, are you familiar with this statistic?
Not the statistic on that. I know many other countries don't allow it. I just did an interview from the United Kingdom, and they don't. Many of them don't. They don't think it's a good idea. But we are loose. There was a point where we didn't allow that. We didn't allow the alcohol commercials or that type of thing.
Right.
Now we're doing that. We have sports betting, which is let's feed all these addictions and devices, and let's say here, let's all do this, and this is the way we're going. We legalized pot and people think it's going to be the cure-all. It's not. It's another drug, and you'll get addicted to it, and you'll have all these so-called side effects, they're bad effects that medication, that drug will bring on. It's just the way it is. There's something to be
all
said.
industry driven in terms of profits and bottom lines. People
That's
make
all it is.
huge profits off of addictions, gambling, drugs, alcohol, even news. I mean, that is a huge addiction. To go back to that whole idea of the news cycle is what really has polarized our nation here. I mean, if you think about that, this didn't really exist so much. It was a very sense of nationalism. And yes, there was always the Democrats versus the Republicans, but this has been extremely divided. And without that much of a middle, which we hopefully will see a resurgence of. But how do you think that has affected our overall health and mental health?
Well, that's been huge. It's not just a divided nation where we're Republicans, Democrat, and now we're farther out. We have gotten to the point that someone will say, well, what's your belief about this one item? And if it's not the way they believe, you are now in with the deplorables. Quote, that's what you are not. You cannot be a friend with me. You don't share that view of mine. So we make judgments. We attack people. That's become part of the herd mentality. So division is what we have built into the nation. And our politicians, our president, they're playing right into it. They clearly tell you what side they're on, which should never occur. The job of the president of the country is to unite people, to let everyone know we're all the same. He's not doing anything close to that.
The United States, right? Well, neither did the prior president.
No, he did not. None of that. We haven't seen that for a while.
Further polarization, yeah.
It was a little subtle, but in the election, between Trump and
Biden.
Clinton, it went back to that really divided everything. It wasn't Trump. People look, well, Trump did it. No, it was that election where we really saw it go. We saw that. That's why I was joking.
It was really a mean.
We actually had a presidential candidate say that if you're voting for that guy, you're a deplorable. And I just thought, whoa, man.
That was a very, very mean campaign environment. It was, and it was
both sides. Both sides. But it hasn't stopped. Now we've normalized that view.
Yes.
This is the way you do things. So is that going to make people angry? Yes. Violence? Yes. Depression, anxiety? Absolutely. It's going to help it. I'm not saying it's causing it, but it will exacerbate it to just the serious levels.
All of the things that we just talked about, addictions and chemicals and how we're marketed to for the prescription society, there's a whole thing there. So what you're saying is that depression doesn't have to be a chemical imbalance. So it's not necessarily that you're born depressed.
No. In the serious cases that can be, and we see a lot of history. So people are predisposed. Let's say it that way. But the environmental effects, what you do in your personal lives, either takes you beyond that or makes it so that it's at least manageable, or it turns it into something that can really, can attack you.
So what do you feel about community as a gateway out of depression? Do you feel that if you could find the right community, that it could lift your depression if you start to?
Absolutely. I talk about networking all the time. Get a network around you. Get a support team around you. That may be your family, it may be friends, it may be a support group, a professional counselor, whatever it is. Build outside of yourself with the goal of becoming stronger inside. You don't want to put all your resources out there. You just want to have the right people that are going to be there for you and be willing to tell you the truth and be willing to help you hold up for a while, at least till you get on your feet. Don't keep it quiet inside yourself. Then it manifests, it grows, it spins, and then you can't find a way out.
Are you familiar with any types of free resources for grief communities or grief circles or depression community? Are you familiar with anything that's a free resource?
They're online, from what people tell me. Clients I have come in and will say that, there are, especially the support groups, they're online if you're willing to do that. Some people like the personal approach, but if you're willing to go online, there are groups for all different kinds of things that you can join, and there's no cost to join them. And in some areas, usually more toward the cities, you're going to find some of those support groups that are offered. I always advise people, go online. If I know some, I give those to the people.
Yeah, I'm looking for specifics, but we'll maybe we can research it. In the meantime, I want to talk with you about our country's mental health. We were talking a little bit about that, how it's changing so quickly. Do you think that this is something that we can address on a national level, that can be formulated? Do you have an idea of a plan that would work?
You know what? It can work. As in any plan you put together, the first thing you're doing is purging, so to speak. We need to, be able to stop going at each other. So it would be a joint effort with the press where we say, let's stop reporting all this division. Let's not, let's stop pulling people into one side or the other. The press is already one side or the other. It's a problem. The press should be unbiased and report things. Politicians, we need to get them to the point where they're representing everyone, not just the people that are going to vote for them. And then we need to start talking. We need to, if we're willing to put all this negativity online, on television, why not? Let's get some programs for people. Let's buy into hours here and say, okay, let's talk. Let's teach from, programs for kids. So from the we're teaching them from the early years, the formative years. Let's talk about being positive. Let's talk about how we're going to come together as a nation. We're doing none of these things. They're such simple procedures.
Yep,
they really are.
The Aware Show has been around for 20 plus years, having this conversation, solutions, that talking about possibilities, bringing on incredible experts like you that have written books on this and have practical advice. And I love the fact that the workbook is, I feel it is a workbook, but it's called the Fix Your Anxiety Handbook. Mm-hmm. And it really gives you a lot of information. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, the book is part of a program we're putting together. It's a series. We started with the Fix Yourself Handbook. Took a while to research that. I wanted to put something out that had short chapters, because I looked into the self-help genre, 30, 40, 50 pages long. And at the end, it kind of just eased itself into out of the chapter. And I thought, well, great, you gave a lot of information. I don't know what you want me to do with it. So I wanted something smaller. Let me condense this information, teach the people about what they need to know in that particular topic, and then give them the steps to do that at the end of every chapter. So first book has 36 chapters, the second book now 21. And it could be, people pleasing. It could be when we talk about anxiety, it could be feeding the demon, as we call it. Here's the information. This is what you're doing. Now do these things. Every book is going to be written that way.
Fantastic.
And to go back to your previous question, when we do these kinds of things, and if we could go to a national level and we tell people, hey, everyone, try doing this. Someone just asked me, what's the way to treat each other the right way? And I said, one person at a time. Just everyone you meet, greet, embrace them, not that you have to hug them, just embrace them, be nice to them, and do it to everyone you meet. It's as simple as it gets, and it's as efficient as it gets.
It is. There is an absolute altruistic effect that happens when you are nice to the person behind the counter, the waitress or the waiter, the flight attendant, the person in line with you. It affects you when you are nice to them. It is such a simple act of compassion. Extremely simple.
And if we see it more often, more people will be willing to use it. Where I live, it's a smaller area, so people know me when I go out. They know I'm going to smile. They know I'm going to say hello, how's everything, that type of thing. And the ones that know me, they're primed and ready to go, because they know, well, I'm going to come in their direction. I'll seek them out. If I see them in the other aisle, I'll go around and get them. And how are you? How's it? And then they do. But then I've noticed that they do it.
Yes.
And then,
yes.
I do it. My kids do it. They'll see, hey, how are you? And they like that. And, we were just in,
go ahead. Sorry.
We were in a store today, and I noticed that he was doing the same thing that I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
They learn it, they see it. And that's all people are looking for the grandiose thing we have to do to make this work. We just have to be nice to each other one at a time.
What a concept. I mean, you don't have to go out of your way, or you can volunteer, you can do anything if it's animals that you want to relate with, great. But just do something that allows you to feel that feeling of happiness, so that you can then start to feel more of it and more of it and more of it. Exactly. Many people identify themselves with, I'm depressed, I have anxiety, I have depression. And it's a label that they put on themselves. How do you remove that stigma of that label?
It's action. You get into action. People will say, I'm this. And I said, well, try this. Well, that's
Great
kind of hard.
answer.
I said, just try it. If you're the one that, puts your head down and walks past people because maybe you get a little intimidated, you don't have to say anything. Just look past them as you're going past them and smile. Try that. They may smile back. And if they don't, that's okay. It's not about you. They didn't learn how to do it yet. Nobody told them. Just do it. Smile. Say hello. If you're checking out at the counter, how are you today? Hey, how's everything? Simple, small talk. It's not about the small talk. It's about the connection. I took my time. I let you know that, I thought enough of you to connect with you. I smiled. Also let you know that when I did, I felt good doing it. So being around you felt good for me too. If it's that back and forth thing that just feels so good. And again, it's so simple to do.
Yes, just like that sip of tea I just had to get rid of my hiccups. Well, it's been awesome to talk with you. Thank you so much. I mean, you have great, very simple techniques, and you offer something after your 4 decades in counseling and 30 years in private practice. You offer something that's very solution oriented called the Fix Your Anxiety Handbook. And it's also great for people that don't have anxiety. There's, just a regular way of allowing yourself to feel happier, right?
Absolutely. You don't have to be broken to get fixed, is what I tell people. You look at yourself and say, let me tweak this and let me tweak this. Just the very fact that you're applying that attention to your life every day tells you that you're telling yourself you're worth the time to do it. You're going to get better at living. You're going to feel better. You're going to be more productive. You're going to be a happier person.
Wow. Well, thank you for this information. This has been great, a great message, and let's take it forward and be kind to someone. Anyone listening to this today, be kind to someone. Thank you so much, Faust. I so appreciate your information.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yes, absolutely. And if anyone heard this on our podcast, you can always go to the Aware Show podcast, share it with a friend, and just say, hey, be kind to someone today. We can all do better at that. And it'll be a better environment that we live in. All right. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Lisa Garr. And until next time, I invite you to stay aware.